For over 62 years, Denmark and China have enjoyed great bilateral diplomatic relations. Denmark was actually one of the first Western countries to establish diplomatic ties with China. Earlier this year, Chinese President Hu Jintao paid the first ever visit to Denmark by a Chinese head of state, a visit which brought bilateral relations between the two countries to an exceptionally high level and sparked a raft of trade agreements. I caught up recently with Denmark's ambassador to China, Mr. Friis Petersen, the week after China held its 18th Party Congress. I began by asking him for his reactions to the change of China's leadership announced at the Congress. Ambassador, thank you for talking to us on China Daily.
My pleasure.
For starters, China's new leadership just made its debut not a while ago. So what do you think, or what do you expect from this new leadership? How do you think it's going to affect the future of China?
I think it's going to affect China tremendously, and also the rest of the world, because China is such an important global power, so interlinked, so interdependent with the whole global economy, because of its last 30 years of economic success with the opening up and reform policies. And I think that the new leaders will first and foremost represent continuity. China, in the last many years, has really demonstrated the ability to produce both, I think, economic development at a very high level, very quick pace, very comprehensive, but also political stability in this process of reformation, opening up. And I think that's going to be continued. At the same time, I think it's underestimating the real crux of the matter, saying that there will be no changes, because any society with China's size, complexity, role in the world economy, political role, of course, needs to take a lot of stances, difficult positions in international negotiations, climate right now in Doha. So we will see a leadership that will have to live up to all these new questions, new daily challenges, living up to the reform of Chinese society in itself that comes with a lot of new sort of problems, cases that needs political standpoints. So the new leaders are really not just in the Standing Committee, but in the Politburo and the whole Central Committee, I think facing in reality much bigger challenges that we are in the West, and therefore also needs to be even more courageous, more competent in their effort to try to handle all these issues. I'm sure they will. They are very well equipped. They have very long careers. I'm impressed by the sort of systematic approach to leader election, selection in this country's political system, where there seems to be a really high importance on performance, on delivery, on success, on ability to navigate, but also to, of course, come clear of all the dangers in being a very prominent leader in a country like China.
Speaking of superpower, you have just mentioned that economically speaking, China has becoming the second largest economy in the world. So people or politicians around the world have actually mixed feelings about this. A lot of countries may consider China as a potential threat. So what do you think?
I think it's understandable that countries around the world sees China as a growing threat. With its size, with its enormous economic potential, comes fear that this can be used, this can also be abused. I think it's therefore in the interest of the Chinese leaders, in interest of all of actors in the Chinese society, to really come across with as much information as possible, to try to be even more open, to be more transparent in the processes, to articulate policies, objectives. I think we can, of course, rely a lot upon the overarching political objectives that your leaders are expressing all the time, and we have great confidence in them. The 12 five-year plan is a very comprehensive document that we can all read and relate to. But on top of that, I think the Chinese political system needs to try to be more articulate, more explicit. That would be very, I think, much in the interest of China in the future. Because with such an economic global dominance and size comes fear. Size sort of draws fire also. I think the US has realized that. So there's a lot of new conditions that you Chinese, I think, are good suited for, have a good philosophical, historical, ideological background for living up to the moderate Chinese approach to many things. You're a non-interventionist foreign policy, but you also have to demonstrate it, I think, in even increasing and clearer way. For us, I think in the rest of the world, it's also important that we try to live up to our obligations to treat China the way we want you to treat us, with respect, with mutual respect, with a willingness to cooperate, to believe in each other, have confidence. I think we Europeans, we Danes, we really believe in having a confident, open, candid conversation about even the most difficult of issues, and then progress on all the areas where we can see there is mutual win-win. And I think all countries in the world realizes the growing role of China needs also to be something we relate to in a constructive manner. If we treat China well, we will affect the way that China develops. But it's I think, dual responsibility for China, all the actors in the Chinese system, citizens, companies, private public entities, government, party, the whole civil society network, social media, and the rest of the world also to interact in a good and positive way. We shape the world ourselves, and therefore we need this conversation that you and I are also having. And it has to be candid and forthright.
You actually came to China 2 years ago, and now you just experienced this major power transition. So how do you think this major transition will affect the Denmark-China diplomatic relationship?
All ambassadors in China will say that it will affect them positively, and I'm no exception to that. I really must admit that I have found China to be extremely dynamic, full of vitality, a lot of potential for new cooperation. Yesterday, I said goodbye to my Minister for Agriculture. Day before yesterday, we opened a milk security center here with some very big Danish and Chinese companies who are working in the field of agriculture. Good quality food is very important for you. Obviously, such a big country, such a big population. It's extremely important for us Danes as well. We happen to have a very long tradition of food security in Denmark, in Europe, and we would like very much to cooperate with China on these issues. And I think what we are, to sort of sum up seeing these years, is a phenomenal opening up where a small country in Northern Europe like mine can work with a huge country in the East like China on all these issues in agriculture, food security, very important for Chinese citizens for good obvious reasons, but also environment, enormous problems with such an economic growth that China has undergone. Comes all the difficulties. How do you handle this environmentally? Wastewater, industrial wastewater, air pollution, all the things that we have been facing. How can China avoid repeating our mistakes? We should sort of cooperate on this. Energy, extremely crucial. How do you use the most renewable energy? How do you make energy savings happen? How do you make industrial development happen without making our mistakes? And I really feel that in the more important fields like research, development, education, social affairs also. So I think we are seeing a completely new type of foreign policy happening with most embassies. And I am very happy and privileged and grateful that I represent a country that has this willingness to cooperate with China on all these issues without any sort of political restrictions. We think that this is very important, that we cooperate on these issues. We expanded. I think we've had 10 ministers coming on all these issues just since August. Next week we will have our Minister of Culture. He was the first minister who visited China this year as well. He will be here with our Crown Prince couple. We will do a lot of creative toys. We will do creative education industry. We will do good food and so on. And I think that ability to have a system like the Chinese and ours where government to government can do that cooperation, support private enterprise is really unique, gives, I think, an enormous potential for the future. I'm very optimistic what this will lead to. Some of the projects I'm most proud of is probably the Danish-Chinese University Center here in Beijing being built. We already had our Prime Minister opening up such a university center. And is that really so important? I think it is, because it means that Danes, young Danes, students are coming here to China to study their master and doctoral degrees with young Chinese citizens, getting to know them, getting to see the world from the East perspective. Yes. So they become global citizens. But more importantly, they become friends. They make, hopefully, friendships forever.
Yes.
That will increase the understanding, the respect, the mutual ability to create companies, new products that sort of takes the best from both civilizations in the East and the West. So I really have great confidence in this youth that will take this Danish-Chinese university education together with smart professors from China and Denmark, that they can expand, excel, create new IPR that we never saw or imagined. Another area where I'm really proud is Center for Renewable Energy. Your administration has been built up the last 5, 6, 7 years only in the field of energy and environment. We were very early on in Denmark in the 70s to create a Ministry of Environment. So for us, this has really been something we've been working on, making strides to progress on, find the scientific, the political best solutions to. And the willingness, again, on the Chinese side to open up, work with us, allow Danish experts to sit and help you making something very technical, grid connectivity. Sounds boring, but of course is extremely crucial to making some of the solutions to these problems that China's sort of growth requires in making it a sustainable economy. So in the end, I think that the whole theme that I actually am very full of support for that happens in China, the willingness to sort of make sustainability in all these sectors a top issue is where I see us having most ability to cooperate with China. And that's extremely
The relationship between the two countries has been excellent over the past 6 decades, with 1 or 2 exceptions, such as when China cooled down its ties with Denmark after its Prime Minister met the Dalai Lama. They were resumed only after the Danish government issued a statement in December 2009 reaffirming Denmark's One China policy and saying it would oppose Tibetan independence. The statement was approved by a majority of the Danish parliament. There are a lot of different voices going on as well, and some of the voices we can't just pretend that it does not exist. For example, Dalai Lama. Mm-hmm. So may I ask your opinion regarding all this, I would not say opposite voices, but different voices about China?
I think it's natural that there are many different voices. You cannot be such a powerful country, such a growing country, with such an enormous political, cultural, economic influence as China's, and especially in the future, without having many different views. I come from a country and a political tradition where we value this sort of diversity of opinions, tolerate, but also, of course, you have to be mindful of treating ideas correctly with a lot of understanding and sympathy, and allow yourselves to lead the way that our countries want to, our peoples want to. I think China has a lot of important sort of headway to do on this. I think it should be a political objective for China to show this increased openness and understanding for diversity of opinions. You see that on all the social media. You engage citizens in society by allowing them to express themselves more freely. I see that happen in China, and that's good. But of course, there's still room for improvement in this area. And I would recommend to try to go into that room, allowing media to grow, social media, free press is, I think, important for this debate in society. We consider the Danish government's policy with regards to Dalai Lama is that he's a religious and cultural figure and not a political figure. We see him like that, and I think he wants to come across as such. And we have no sort of wish to change that view of ours on him. We have often debated it in the Danish parliament, and the Danish politicians are very attentive to what he says. But we also have a clear policy towards China. We have a very clear One China policy. We're one of the very first Western countries to recognize People's Republic of China in January 1950. And we have had parliaments and governments that want to stay on that course. So we've recognized the territorial integrity and unity of People's Republic since 1950. Within that framework, we relate to all the issues that comes without changing the foundation.
But ask the average man in the street what they know about Denmark and its economy, and most people will probably tell you that it is an incredibly green country dedicated to energy conservation and the generation of clean energy. Denmark's landscape is renowned for its wind turbines, a technology in which Denmark leads the world. Speaking of territory, about like half an hour ago, before I step on the Denmark territory, I have noticed that you have a lot of, I would say, surprisingly interesting things here in your embassy. For example, there are 2 bicycles here at the door. Do you always use bicycles, or like it's part of your saving the environment plan here, or are you just trying to introduce your lifestyle here?
We use bikes in Denmark. We love our bikes. We need our bikes. It's a very practical, very fast, very costly way of getting around. So I think you need to have your bike as close to you as possible outside your door. When I go to the gym, I jump on this bike and I park it at the. I'm very happy that there is a bike parking just next to the gym I use in Western Hotel. So I try to use it daily, but it's practical. It's much faster than taking my car, going there, parking, all the hassle. And I enjoy very much being on my bike. I think Denmark and Copenhagen is full of bike because it's practical. It's also healthy. And I think you have to combine in times of high standard of living, modern types of office work, healthy lifestyle, transportation, into this good, harmonious balance where you get a lot of exercise and do it in an environmentally friendly way. So there are many good objectives with having a bike. I love biking.
So how are you introducing your harmonious lifestyle here? By
we also
revamping your apartment, like reusing the water, like what you have done here? I have heard a lot about this.
Yes, well, we Danes are very much attentive to environment, and we really believe in being sustainable in our approach to economic development. So it's a mindset. It also is a policy where the government has really introduced very demanding regulatory conditions for our business, for our households. You cannot build in Denmark a house without really living up to enormous demanding energy-saving requirements. You have to insulate your house, you have to recycle water, you have to recycle waste, you have to really be attentive to environment and energy, and in all general, sort of speaking, resource saving. You have to optimize that. I have no doubt that the Chinese leaders really understand this. I meet so many Chinese leaders yesterday evening in Chongqing. Tonight I'll go to Chengdu that are expressing this. I think for China it's a matter of translating it. We try to do some of that demonstration of how we translated it. So we will here in the coming month at our embassy make it even more environmentally friendly, introduce solar panels on the roofs to use less electricity that probably comes from carbon-based power plants somewhere in China. So we'll try to reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our sort of emission of CO2 per person living here, working here in the embassy. I think Denmark has a very high standard of living, maybe more than $50,000 per capita per year. In California and the US, you would have the same. Our average electricity consumption in Denmark is 5,900 kilowatt hour per year. With the same standard of living, the Californians use more than double, 12,100 kilowatt hour per person per year. And that matters. We have the same quality life, so there's no differences that. And I think my point is that there's no contradiction between living at a very high standard of living, enjoying all the benefits of modern economic advances, and still decrease and live at a very low electricity consumption or energy or commodity consumption. China is the most populous country in the world, so you more than any really need to sort of follow suit and engineer your society create your society politically, but also individually. I think there's a huge responsibility with every citizen to treat your country, your city, your house with respect, and not litter, not throw waste, not be negligent about electricity use or water use or how you produce and create garbage and so on. All these small things that really matters. It's a matter of civilization that we individuals create for society. In a country like China, where urbanization, it's such a big theme that we have even forgotten in the West to give political importance, to give importance to how urban areas are created. And I think this is a small piece of Denmark in the middle of a very big city, Beijing. And it's, of course, very Danish. Everything you see here is, I think, really signaling Denmark. But it's also clearly very influenced by Chinese ideas, the low one-story hutong-like building, the inner courtyards, the road to the public and the windows to the internal private rooms. So we are really trying to sort of live what we preach here in China, environmentally friendly, but also cooperation and willingness to do the best from each other's civilizations.
Okay, so do you think we can go and take a look at your residence and see how you have tried to introduce your lifestyle here?
And yes, sir.
Okay, let's go.